What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live it label free. As always, bringing you phenomenal guests from all over the world. Today's guest is a professor of marketing and a research psychologist at the University of Michigan on the Dearborn campus. He has also been ranked 22 in the world for research impact and consumer behavior, ranked in the top 2% of all scientists in the world across all disciplines by a Stanford University study. Please welcome Dr. Aaron Ahuvia. Do I call you Dr. Aaron?
You can call me anything that floats your boat. You can just call me Aaron, Dr. Ahuvia, whatever.
Well, I should have asked that when we started. We've had a fantastic conversation before we gotten started. But we've got a lot to talk about. So you are very much into marketing and research. And I think that probably is so interesting to learn about the behaviors behind consumer decisions in their purchasing, because it is very psychological.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So what made you go that route? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, it's kind of a long and convoluted story.
Okay.
But I've always had this dual sort of a little tension in what I wanted to do, because I really like business. Even when I was like a really little kid, I used to like do all the lawn mowing stuff, and my friends would be like, shouldn't we stop? And I'm like, no, we should go more, Yeah. So I always had that sort of businessy, ambitious thing going and like that. But at the same time, I also was interested in ideas. I actually, when I was younger, I was very interested in philosophy as a kid. I started taking philosophy courses at the University of Michigan when I was 15 or 16 years old, and ended up graduating there with a degree in philosophy undergraduate, and really enjoyed that. But there was just no jobs. I mean, who's going to hire a guy with a degree in philosophy? So I ended up getting a job at a company that I was interested in because it set up employee-owned companies. I thought that was a really neat idea.
Yeah.
Thought it was a beautiful concept. Turned out I really hated the work. I bet some of your listeners can relate to that. Like, you get a job, it sounds good, you've never done it, and then you start to do it, and you're like, oh, this is not for me at all. This is terrible.
Yeah.
And I was at that point in the MBA program at Northwestern because I needed to know a little bit about business for my job. And I went to one of my professors and said, I hate my job. What should I do? And he said, you're not an MBA person. You're a professor at heart. Come and go to the Ph.D. program and become a marketing professor. So I just thought that was a great idea. And it let me kind of put the two sides of myself together, because I do like the business stuff. I've always been fascinated by marketing. I do a lot of consulting for businesses, the auto companies.
Yeah.
Right now, I have an ongoing relationship with Google. I've done a couple of projects for them, for Samsung, for L'Oreal Cosmetics.
Yeah.
So I like that side of it, but I also, sometimes I can be critical of business.
Sure.
I worry about stuff. Especially marketing. I worry about some of the stuff we do in marketing and whether it's really helping people or not. That wouldn't surprise anyone to find out. If you're kind of perceptive, you don't have to be that smart to realize some of the stuff we do in marketing might not be.
But our whole world is about marketing, though.
It is.
Everything's marketing these days, whether you're looking at it as self-promotional or you're for a business, whatever, because that's what social media is. All you're doing is either self-promoting or promoting a product or service. That's it.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy. He's a real famous professor of mine named Philip Kotler. And he's probably was the most famous marketing professor in the world for various reasons. And he said exactly, you could have been the most famous marketing professor in the world, because he said exactly what you said. You said, everything is marketing. Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting. He said, well, even if you're dating, you're marketing yourself.
Yeah.
And my response to that was, because I was single at the time.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so much more interesting than marketing. So I asked him, and he said, like, yeah, you can study dating as marketing, sure. So I then met a Professor Mara Edelman, and she actually had data on some dating services that were just getting going. This is when the internet was just taking off a little bit. And at that time, almost nobody used singles ads or dating services or anything like that. Today, they're the most common way that people meet each other. But at that time, they weren't. And I actually predicted, I said, this is going to be huge because it's just a better way to meet people.
Yeah.
And so we ended up writing 5 major papers together. And I can safely say that we were the world's leading academic authorities on dating services. Wow. And I can say that without hesitation because we were the only academic authorities on dating services. Nobody else was looking at this topic at all. People thought it was like a goofy thing to look at. So if you're the only one doing it, I suppose you can frame it as the best, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how I ended up on the Oprah Winfrey Show. She was interested in this topic. She did a lot of stuff with that. And it was really great. But at a certain point, I knew that I was going to have to get a job at a legit business school.
Okay.
And they weren't going to hire some guy who was like the dating service professor. That just wasn't going to go over. So I thought, what the heck can I do? I've spent years now studying the psychology of love because I was working on all this dating service stuff.
Yeah.
And I need to do something that's going to fit better with a conventional marketing degree.
Right.
So the light bulb went off and I said, well, people talk about loving products and loving brands and loving services and loving all kinds of things. Do they? I mean, is that just a figure of speech?
Yeah.
Or
so we have influencers these days on social media making millions of dollars.
Yep. Or do they actually love stuff? And if they do, what is that kind of love? What is it? And what does it have to do with what we think of when we say we love our kids or we love our spouse?
Yeah.
The same or different? So that was, I ended up getting into that area. And it turned out I was the first person ever to do it's sort of a sustained program of scientific research on that particular topic. And that topic is, after that, became quite popular.
Mm-hmm.
So marketers might be familiar with the term brand love. People talk about that sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I didn't invent that term, but along with Barbara Carroll, I published the first sort of academic paper that used the term and sort of popularized the term that had been around a little bit before. And I published a lot. I've worked on this a great deal. And I have a book now that sort of summarizes for non-academics, hopefully in a fun way. The reviews say people find it fun and funny. All this research kind of put together. Really, the book, it's called The Things We Love, How Our Passions Connect Us and Make Us Who We Are. And business people find it useful, but the primary audience are just curious people. Just people who are interested in psychology, interested in themselves. They want to understand themselves and their neighbors and their family a little better than they do.
I would love that. I would love that book. So tell us. So I love where you shifted gears and kind of went in your life. Mm-hmm. Maybe share with us some ideas on how people connect with things that they buy. What motivates them to purchase something?
So there's a couple different reasons or motivations that people have. So for a huge amount of the stuff we have, we're buying it without putting much thought into it. We don't love it. We don't really care very much about it. It's just convenient. We've always bought it. It's a habit. Sometimes in marketing, we'll call that low involvement consumption, meaning the consumer isn't very involved with it. They're just like grabbing something off the store shelf. It looks interesting. And that's very impulsive. And I have a friend, Carolyn Yoon, who's a marketing professor, also at University of Michigan, who studies this. And she's a neuroscientist. She does all this research. You might have heard of where they put people in the brain scanner and scan their brain as they're doing different things. So she does that stuff. And she tells me that those decisions happen in a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
Within the brain. And people just, for whatever reason, they see something and it strikes them in a positive way and they just go. My work tends to be on the other end of the spectrum. This is fewer things, but more important things. So these are the things that you don't have a lot of these in your life, but you care a lot about them. You think about them. You think about them. You may buy a jar of salsa and not really give it any thought.
Yeah.
And certainly if you're not using the salsa, you're not thinking about it. But these things, you can be sitting there trying to do some work, and then they'll pop into your head, this thought of my car, or this clothing that I want, or a vacation that I really long to go on, or this dream house that I want to build, or whatever the project is that you're working on. These kind of thoughts come and intrusive into your head, and people really care about the stuff. And that's potentially stuff that people love. And for that stuff, it's like a two-step process. So the first step is just, it's got to be really good.
Yeah.
So if you ask people, when they use the word love loosely, they say, oh, I love your haircut, I love your car, whatever it is.
The surface things.
And you find out what they mean. What really all they're saying is, it's really good. That's a really good haircut. That's a really good car.
Yeah.
And from that, we can learn that people do love things in part because they're really good. So that's kind of step one. But where it gets really interesting, there's a lot of things that we think are really good that we don't love. So I think Mercedes makes extremely good cars, but I don't love Mercedes cars.
Yeah.
They're not my car.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that we think are really good that we don't love. So the interesting stuff comes now. It's like, okay, what else beyond just thinking it's really good has this effect? And there's three kinds of things that come in. So the least often, but weirdest, and therefore fun, are anthropomorphic things. So these are things that actually look kind of like a person, and your brain treats it like a person because your brain kind of gets fooled.
Okay.
So sometimes people will develop a relationship with an object that has this sort of anthropomorphic quality. Now, in some cases, this can get really nutsy.
Can you give us an example of what that would look like with that kind of object? What is it?
Oh, yeah, sure. A car.
Okay.
Front of a car. Auto designers actually call the front of the car the face of the car.
Sure.
The headlights look like eyes. And people respond to the face of the car using the same kind of emotional cues they get from the face of a person. So people have different facial expressions, and car designers intentionally design the car to have a particular facial expression depending on the kind of reaction they want from the consumer.
That is very interesting. I never heard that before.
So that's a typical example. And that's, in terms of things people love, that's the smallest group.
Okay.
Next, and the one that we'll talk about, gift giving in a little bit, that's a huge, huge thing, is that you love this thing and it's only partly about the thing that you love, and it's more about another person.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time when people love things, it's all about the way the object connects them to another person. So it could be,
I love the way clothes make me feel. So how does that connect me to another person? I'm a clothes horse. I love my clothes. So what does that say about me?
All right. So the third one I was going to get to. So sometimes it does though, right? So for example, right now, could you lean a little bit back so I can see your sweatshirt in the.
Wow, I didn't have time to get dressed up today because, like I said, I had to go to the Tesla dealer, and that was a freaking debacle. So usually I'm dressed up for my shows, but I needed to get going. So I'm looking a little pretty for you, but I'm not as dressed up as I normally am. So this is not going to say much about me right now.
It says caffeine.
Yeah, so I did have my caffeine today.
I do caffeine. Excellent. So it says something about your identity.
Okay.
Right? So clothing it connects us to certain groups. Like if I wear a Michigan t-shirt, it connects me to all the people associated with the University of Michigan. And if I wear if I'm of a certain ethnicity and I wear clothing that is typical of that ethnicity, it's connecting me with that ethnic group. And so it can make those group connections, but it can also make more personal connections. If you dress in a style that is similar to somebody else, that can make a very personal connection. Or if somebody gives you a gift of an item of clothing and you wear it, then that gift connects you to the other person who gave it to you because you associate it with them. But the third thing, and clothing comes in bigger here, and that is that we take things that become part of our identity. We use them to express our identity and to create our identity at the same time. And so that's huge, and that's core to all love. So here's where it gets really kind of psychologically interesting. When you love another person, what happens there is your mind has this mental boundary it puts around yourself. And it says, I'm me, and the rest of the stuff out there isn't me.
Right. Yeah.
When you fall in love with another person, that boundary opens up, expands, captures the other person, and closes up around behind them. So now you and that other person we say two become as one when you fall in love.
Yeah.
And so your brain sees them as sort of part of who you are in this extended way.
Yeah.
And that facilitates you being altruistic towards them. You care about them. You sympathize with them much more intuitively because your mind is seeing them as part of you. Yeah. And you see this tremendously with children. When you have children, they come from you. Yeah. Right? So they really are part of you in this way. Like literally, they come right out, for a woman, right out of your body. They're really just a part of you in this way. And if they're hungry, you just want to feed them. Right. It's like if you're hungry, it's obvious that you want to eat. If they're hungry, it's obvious that you want to feed them.
Yeah. Because
they're just so much a part of you. Well, certain products or objects can also become part of us in the same way. So they're not physically part of us, but emotionally and mentally, our brain makes them part of us, thinks of them as part of our body, extensions of who we are.
What about dogs?
Dogs, so much the same. Yeah. Dogs get a little bit. Now, dogs get a little bit of all of this, but dogs are quasi people. Like we know they're dogs, but psychologically, we think they're people. Yeah. And we talk to them all the time. I talk to my dogs all the time. I say all kinds of things to them.
They're both laying next to me right now.
I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm like, but I talk to them that way anyway.
Exactly.
And because we love our dogs, and they've got those such cute faces. Oh, and my son, I was cuddling one of our dogs last night. It was kind of funny. I was on the living room couch with one dog, and my wife was in the kitchen with the other dog, and he took out his camera and made this little film of cutting back and forth between us both, like focused on dogs. That's cute. And I said to him, I said, Jonah, you can make fun of us with the dogs, but it's your fault. If you had just stayed a small child forever, we would never need the dogs.
True. Very true. What is it? I have a question. I love all the wisdom and explaining like the certain behaviors behind like why the connections that we have with things and things that we purchase. I think, in my opinion, people operate more from a want than a need standpoint when they are purchasing. Mm-hmm. Because I know I'm an impulse shopper. Like a shiny object, I'm like a squirrel. Like, yeah, I want that. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten better as I've gotten older, because you force yourself to be a little bit more responsible. But I think that that we're more motivated by a want than a need.
Right. And if by want, you mean something that just sort of appeals to you momentarily.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I'll tell a little secret. I get Botox, right? So I do my maintenance. I've done it since I was 26. I remember I went to get a touch up one time, and the woman that did my touch up, gorgeous lady, gorgeous. She says, My Botox will come before groceries. If I don't have money for groceries, oh wow, I'm getting my Botox before groceries. And now that would be a situation where she's putting want before need, because she doesn't need the Botox, she wants it, and she's okay having no food in her kitchen if she as long as she can get her Botox first. So that's what I'm saying, like something like that.
But that's also very human.
Yeah.
Because as humans were evolving, we think that, for example, let's just go with the example you gave there.
Okay.
Woman is putting her physical appearance before food. And a lot of people would hear that and think, oh, she's insane.
Yeah.
But there actually is an evolutionary basis for that kind of behavior.
Interesting. Okay.
It is sometimes people think that today things like office politics, drive everything. Whereas in the past, we weren't worried about office politics. In the past, we were just worried about getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or something. Like, that's completely wrong. In fact, it's backwards.
Huh.
As humans were evolving, the most recent parts of our evolution, when our brain was evolving, we were living in these groups that were incredibly tight-knit and cooperative and collaborative. And the worst thing that could happen to you is that you get shunned by your group.
Right.
So if you don't eat for a day, people don't need to eat every day. If you've got water, you can go for a couple of days without food if you need to.
Yeah.
But if you fall out with your group and ruin those social relationships in some way, that might be something you can't recover from. So when this woman is getting Botox, now, obviously, you don't really need Botox. And they didn't have Botox when the human brains were evolving, or any of these sorts of things. But our brains did get hardwired to care what other people think of us, to pay a tremendous attention to what other people think of us.
There you go.
And I hear from people, especially sometimes my students, usually it's men. I don't know if I've ever heard this from a woman, but I hear this from men, in their 20s all the time. I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I only do things because I want to do them. I don't follow the crowd. Nobody influences me but me. I hear that. That's such horse manure. That's nonsense. The human brain is just set up to care, because working with other people, getting along with other people, or sometimes competing with other people for status or competing with them for other things, that was a matter of life and death. As we were evolving, more than it is today. If today you have a falling out with your family and you all hate each other, you just move. I mean, it's terrible emotionally, but your life isn't on the line. You just move somewhere else and just don't deal with them. You get fired from your job, you just get another job.
Yeah.
But you've got a group of 150 people living in the middle of the rainforest somewhere. You get thrown out by yourself. You're
probably gonna die unless you're tough.
That's not good. That's not good.
Yeah, that is definitely not good. So let's switch gears a little bit. So before we started recording, we were talking about like shopping. And so as someone who's like into market science research and all of that, as we're getting into the holiday season, what are some, I guess, tips, or what would you like to share with us in terms of that?
Yeah. So I do there's a lot of different approaches I use in my research. One of them is very simple. I just ask people, is there anything that you love? If so, what is it? And tell me about it. And we have a conversation about it. I've done this for 30 years. I've interviewed a lot of people. I lost count a very long time ago. People mention a lot of different things. They have food, they love nature, but something that comes up very frequently are gifts that people have received.
Okay.
And I've done this long enough that I've been able to put together some insights into gifts people really love and gifts people don't love at all. And so I've got some do's and don'ts that hopefully might help people a little bit. And if you're interested interested in this, I will shamelessly plug my book. It's not a how-to manual on how to buy gifts, but it is a how-to manual on how to bring more love into your life by activities that you love and objects that you love, and having that be a greater part of your life. And once you understand why people love things, it's a lot easier to buy somebody a present that they love.
Sure.
So if you're thinking you got the holiday coming up and you're thinking, how am I going to do this? And then if you don't like the book, you can always just keep it in good condition, give that to somebody as a gift, and
repurpose.
You're going to re-gift it to somebody else.
I love it.
So here's some of the do's and don'ts. I'm going to start with 2 don'ts.
Okay.
Number 1, be really careful about decorative gifts. It is so hard to know somebody else's taste in decoration. I have been happily married for 31 years to my lovely wife. I cannot predict with any accuracy what music she's going to like, what object she's going to like.
Wow.
All I've learned is just better ask her, because it often happens that I just get that wrong. And a lot of people get gifts and then that have a sort of a decorative quality to them. And then they lie to the giver and say, this is fabulous. And the giver thinks, oh, I got them a fabulous gift. And then they get home, they're like, what the hell are we going to do with this piece of crap, right? That they don't like.
Yeah.
So just, unless you really, really know the person well, stay away from that. Number 2, most people don't do this, but it does happen on occasion. And when it does, it's a disaster. And it's the, I wish you were more like this gift, where, you, young man, like video games.
Yeah.
Your uncle, or say, think you'd be better off if you were playing chess, because I think that that's a more respectable thing to be doing. So I'm going to get you a chess set.
Right.
As a hint that you should be the kind of person I wish you were, not the kind of person you are. Wow. That goes over like a lead balloon.
So I want to challenge that really quick, since in the psychological, and we're going to go through this and we got to start wrapping things up. But would someone give a gift like that because maybe they want to spend more time with them because they don't necessarily understand how to do video games, but chess they know. So it's a gift where they could essentially, they can learn and they could spend more time with that person. That's what I would get from that.
You are so spot on. That's amazing. This is the second one you just completely nailed in a half hour. Yes and no. So a lot of times when they buy the chess set, it might be a little bit of it, but a lot of it is like, no, I wish you were this other kind of person.
Okay.
However, what you've just said, that's the big secret to the gift people love. The gift that people love is the one that comes complete with you. Yeah. So if you're in this situation and you don't know how to play video games and the person plays video games, don't get them a chess set. Get them a video game and tell them that the condition of my gift is that you have to teach me how to play this game. We're going to sit down together and you're going to teach me. And the recipient will love that. They want to be an expert, to be able to teach. If you give this to a younger person, to be able to teach grown-up something, love that role. They get super excited. I was talking about this yesterday with my son, and he said that he had to, as one of the security passwords, he was asked, what's your favorite game? And he realized, he gave the name of the game. He realized, wait a second, this is a game I haven't played since I was 8 years old. I have other games which are much sort of more fun and more sophisticated. Why do I love this game? Because my dad and my brother and I, we all used to play it. The three of us used to play it together. And so it's about the people. It's not about the game.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you could find whatever it is that makes that connection, and if you can do something that comes complete with your participation, you do something together as a result of the gift.
Yeah.
That's the gift that will be remembered and really be loved. So that would be I've got a number of hints, but the number one hint would be find a gift where you and your time are included as part of the gift.
Boom. On that note, where can people find you, connect with you, and purchase that book?
The book is called The Things We Love, How Our Passions Connect Us and Make Us Who We Are. And it is available anywhere that books are sold, easily Amazon or most other bookstores. I have a website called thethingswelove.com, and it's fun. I've got a quiz in there. You can find out how much you love something with the Love-O-Meter quiz. It's got pictures of people with things they love. It's a lot of fun. So The Things We Love, you can just check that out as a website. And lastly, my last name is Ahuvia. It's spelled exactly like it sounds, Ahuvia. A friend of mine once said to me, it would be Ahuvia to remember Ahuvia. And I that's awesome. I did not come up with that myself. So there aren't that many of us Ahuvias out there. If you put in, The Things We Love Ahuvia in any search engine, you'll find me. And if you've got questions about this stuff, track me down. My email's available through the University of Michigan. I'm happy to answer questions. So be in touch.
I love it. You guys, I'm going to put those links in the show notes. So go ahead and reach out to Dr. Aaron and ask him any questions you want. I think he'd be happy to have a conversation with you and steer you in the right direction. So yeah, go click that link and go purchase the book. Well, Dr. Aaron, I've loved this conversation. I think we could keep going. So perhaps we'll have to have a part 2 down the line. But thank you for sharing your wisdom and your advice and everything that you've learned over your years of becoming a PhD and all the market research that you do. I love the psychology behind it because I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to that. So I enjoy learning more from you, especially when it comes to purchasing.
It's really been a pleasure. This is a wonderful podcast. I completely appreciate the opportunity. And if the book or any of the advice can help anybody out have a little bit more love in their life, obviously, first and foremost with the people around you, but in addition to that, loving the things that you surround yourself with, that's fabulous too.
So I always ask for last words of wisdom or advice. Is that going to be it, or do you have something else?
No, that would be it.
That would be it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. We'll look forward to having you back further down the line, and you can update us. Perhaps there's going to be another book for the audience to check out.
That would be fabulous.
You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. Please don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic